The wind howled across the lonely prairie that evening, carrying with it the scent of rain and dust. Sarah Collins pulled her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders as she stepped out of her small wooden house to gather the last of the firewood before the storm arrived. Life had never been easy for Sarah. After her husband passed away 3 years earlier, she had been left alone to take care of their small farm at the edge of town. The crops barely grew, the animals were few, and most days she survived on little more than hope and hard work. Yet despite her struggles, Sarah had a heart that refused to grow bitter. The neighbors often said she was the kindest soul for miles around. As the dark clouds gathered above, Sarah noticed a figure walking slowly along the muddy road leading to her house. At first, she thought it might be a traveler heading toward town, but as the man came closer, she realized he looked exhausted. His clothes were dusty, his boots worn from miles of travel, and he carried a cowboy hat in his hand as if he had lost the strength to wear it. Rain began to fall and the stranger stopped near her fence, clearly unsure whether he should approach. Sarah hesitated for a moment. In those parts of the country, strangers could be dangerous. But the man's tired eyes held no threat, only weariness. Gathering her courage, she stepped forward. "Sir, you look like you've been walking for a long time," she called gently. "The storm's coming fast. If you need a place to rest, you can stay here tonight." The stranger seemed surprised by her offer. He walked closer and nodded respectfully. "Ma'am, I'd be grateful for just a dry corner of your barn. I won't trouble you." Sarah shook her head. "The barn leaks worse than the sky. Come inside. I don't have much, but you're welcome to share what little I have." Inside the small house, the warmth of the fireplace pushed away the cold rain outside. Sarah placed a pot of simple vegetable stew over the fire while the stranger sat quietly at the wooden table. He introduced himself only as Daniel. He spoke politely but little, watching the room with thoughtful eyes. The house was clearly poor, patched walls, worn furniture, and a kitchen shelf that held very few supplies. Yet despite the lack of wealth, the place felt warm. When Sarah placed a bowl of stew in front of him, Daniel looked at it for a long moment. "You didn't have to do this," he said quietly. Sarah smiled. "My mother used to say that kindness multiplies when shared. Besides, storms are easier to face with company." They ate together as the rain pounded against the roof. Daniel listened as Sarah spoke about her life, the small farm, the struggle to keep it running, and the loneliness that sometimes filled the quiet nights. She spoke honestly, never asking for pity. Daniel, however, seemed deeply moved. Later that night, Sarah prepared a small bed for him near the fireplace. As she blew out the lantern, she said something that stayed with Daniel long after the house fell silent. "You never know when helping someone might change a life." Outside, the storm raged through the dark prairie. But inside that small home, something unexpected had begun. What Sarah didn't know was that Daniel Harper was not just a wandering cowboy. In truth, he was one of the wealthiest ranch owners in the entire state. For weeks, he had been traveling quietly through small towns, observing how people treated strangers when they believed no reward was possible. And no one had shown him kindness the way Sarah had. As Daniel stared into the fading firelight, he realized something important. In a world where many people chased money and status, this poor woman possessed something far more valuable, a genuine heart. He fell asleep that night wondering if fate had brought him to her door for a reason. And perhaps it had. Before we continue the story, take a moment to support the channel. If you enjoy heartfelt stories like this, make sure to subscribe and join us for many more inspiring tales that remind us how kindness can change lives. Morning sunlight slowly crept through the small window as the storm clouds drifted away across the prairie. Sarah woke early as usual, stepping quietly into the kitchen so she wouldn't disturb her guest. She prepared a simple breakfast of bread and eggs, humming softly as the rooster crowed outside. Daniel watched from the doorway for a moment before speaking. "You wake early," Sarah laughed lightly. "Farm life doesn't allow much sleeping in." They sat down to eat, and Daniel looked around the small home again. Everything showed signs of struggle, the cracked walls, the patched curtains, and the nearly empty pantry. Yet Sarah's smile never faded. After breakfast, Daniel helped repair a broken fence outside. The two worked side by side in the morning sun. For the first time in months, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in a long while: companionship. When the work was done, Daniel dusted off his hands and turned toward her. "Sarah," he said gently, "you showed kindness to a stranger without expecting anything in return. That's rare." Sarah shrugged modestly. It's just the right thing to do. Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small leather wallet. From it, he removed a card and handed it to her. Sarah looked down and froze. The card read, Daniel Harper, Harper Ranch Holdings. Her eyes widened as realization slowly dawned. Wait, you're that Daniel Harper? She whispered. The name was known across the region. Harper Ranch was the largest and most successful ranch business in the state. The man standing in front of her wasn't a poor traveler at all, he was a millionaire. Daniel nodded slightly. Yes, but last night I was simply a stranger in need of shelter. Sarah was speechless. I've been traveling across the country quietly, Daniel continued, watching how people treat others when they believe no reward is possible. Most doors stayed closed. He looked around the small farm, but yours didn't. Sarah shook her head slowly. I didn't help you for money. I know, Daniel said warmly. That's exactly why it matters. He paused before continuing. This farm, it deserves a chance. And so do you. Over the next hour, Daniel explained his plan. He wanted to invest in Sarah's land, repair the farmhouse, and help turn the small property into a thriving ranch. Not as charity, but as a partnership. Sarah could hardly believe it. Why me? She asked. Daniel smiled. Because kindness like yours builds the kind of world worth investing in. Months later, the once struggling farm had transformed. New barns stood proudly beside green fields. Healthy cattle grazed peacefully, and Sarah no longer worried about surviving the winter. Yet the greatest change wasn't the farm. It was the friendship that had grown between two people who met during a stormy night. And the story spread across the county as a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can open the biggest doors. So remember this, you never truly know who might walk into your life, needing help, or how one good deed can change everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and join our growing community. More powerful stories are waiting for you, and your support helps us keep sharing inspiring tales that remind us all that kindness still exists in the world.